My name's Tyler Hansen. I'm 29, and I live just outside Huron, South Dakota. I'm not a cop or a soldier or anything like that. I turn wrenches for a living. I'm not the kind of guy who goes looking for ghost stories or monsters on YouTube. I work, go home, have a few beers, then go to sleep. That's about it. But a few years ago, something stepped out in front of my truck on a gravel road outside Huron, and then, this summer, I saw the thing a second time. Most people online would probably call it a Dogman. I don't care what anybody calls it. I just know it's real, and it should not be out there. People need to know. That's why I've decided to share my story here. So let's get into it. I was coming off a 14-hour shift at the shop the night I first saw it, driving home on that gravel county road like I'd done 100 times before. That's the only reason I'm even telling this. I know that road. I know what trucks do when you hit stuff at speed, and I know what I saw wasn't anything that's supposed to live in our area. It was a Tuesday in late August. I had to stay late to finish a transmission job and didn't clock out until close to 11. By the time I topped off the fuel and grabbed a gas station coffee, it was after midnight. The road I take home is nothing special, just a straight county section line outside Huron, fields on both sides, some shelter belts, and a couple of field approaches. No houses for a good stretch. I like it because there's no traffic, and it saves me 10 minutes compared to staying on the highway. I wasn't speeding, not really. Maybe 5 over what I usually do on gravel. Coffee in the cup holder, radio low, high beams on. I'd done that run half asleep plenty of times. You still pay attention, though. You learn to watch for deer, farm equipment, and the odd coyote. That night, everything was quiet. No wind, no dust, just the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel. I remember thinking that if a deer jumped out, I'd have no warning because there was corn on both sides, barely 2 feet from the road. Just as I finished the thought, something moved at the edge of my headlights. At first, I thought it was exactly that, a deer cutting across one field to the other. All I saw at first was the tops of the stalks shaking on the left side of the road, and little flashes of something dark between them, like a back or shoulder pushing through the rows. My foot was already on the brake pedal, and I was slowing down gently. When I was about 60 or 80 feet away, doing around 20, it suddenly burst out of the corn and into the open, low at first, like it was still fighting the plants, then higher once it hit bare gravel. My foot floated over the brake, trying to judge if I needed to stop or just let it pass. By the time the shape hit the center of the beam, I knew it wasn't a deer. To be honest, I still have no idea what I was looking at in that moment. The second it stepped fully into the light, my brain just locked up. I'd been ready for a whitetail, maybe a big dog. Instead, there was this thing standing in the road that should not have been there. It looked like some kind of werewolf. That's the only way I can put it now without dancing around it. It was upright, on 2 legs, but hunched over at the shoulders like it wasn't really built to walk upright. Long arms dangled down in front of it, hands hanging just above the gravel. The head was big for the body, like somebody had stuck a wolf's head on a thick human neck. Short muzzle, not long like a pure wolf, with massive teeth sticking out even with the jaw closed. The fur was dark and heavy across the chest and shoulders, patchier around the stomach. I didn't see any clothes, just hair. It didn't keep going like a normal animal would. It hit the middle of the lane and just stopped dead, staring straight into my high beams. I've seen deer, raccoons, and even people freeze up in headlights before. This was like that, and not like that at the same time. It raised its head a little, squinting, and I saw both eyes shine back at me, dead center in the beam. Something in me snapped right then. All the sensible stuff I'd ever been taught about braking and steering around wildlife went out the window. Instead of stopping, my foot went the wrong way. I hit the gas. The truck surged forward. I don't know if it was panic, instinct, or some part of me thinking, if I go faster, I'll get past it before it gets to me. Whatever it was, I aimed for the open space just behind it and yanked the wheel a little to the left, trying to give it room and avoid a straight-on hit. The problem was, it moved, too. Just as I came up on it, maybe 10 or 15 feet away, the thing flinched, turned back towards the field it came from, and dropped back to all fours, like it was trying to get out of the beam. Either way, we ended up in the same spot at the same time. I didn't catch it square. If I had, my truck would have been done for. That bastard was at least the size of an adult black bear, if not larger. I clipped it with the front bumper on the driver's side. There was a solid thump and a jolt through the frame. Then my side mirror hit it and snapped off. The whole truck rocked, hard enough that the airbag popped out. 1 second, I was staring over the hood. The next, I was eating fabric and dust, ears ringing, eyes full of that burnt powder smell. My hands reacted before my head did. I shoved the airbag aside, grabbed for the wheel, and yanked it back to the right, completely overcorrecting. The rear end stepped out on the loose gravel, and the truck started to slide sideways. I remember the spotlights swinging off the road and across the ditch, then lighting up the corn on the right side like someone had kicked a floodlight sideways, the rows bending and flashing past in a white blur. The front tires dropped off the crown of the road and into the shallow ditch. I bounced once, hard enough to lift me halfway out of the seat, then plowed straight into the field. Corn stalks exploded against the bumper and windshield, thumping and scraping along the sides. I had both feet welded to the floor. Brake, gas, I couldn't even tell which at that point. I didn't go far, maybe 30 yards into the field. The ground there was still soft from earlier rain, and the truck buried its nose just enough to stop dead. The engine growled, then settled into a rough idle. The only other sounds were the ticking of hot metal and the rustling of broken stalks settling back into place. I sat there for a few seconds, breathing hard, trying to figure out if I was hurt. My stomach hurt where the belt had grabbed me, and my knees had smacked the dashboard when I bounced, but nothing felt broken. My hands were still locked on the wheel. In that first moment, I wasn't thinking about the thing I'd hit. I was thinking like a mechanic who'd just shoved his own truck into a field. How bad is the damage? And can I drive out of this? Habit kicked in. I dropped the shifter into reverse and eased onto the gas. The engine revved, and the whole truck rocked, but the rear tires just spun and dug deeper into the mud at the edge of the ditch. I tried feathering it, tried a little more throttle, but the result was the same, spinning and that wet, grinding sound from the tires. I put it back into drive and tried creeping forward. The truck lurched maybe a foot or two, pushing more broken stalks over, then sank in again. I tried rocking it back and forth a couple of times, but I could feel it settling, not freeing up. After the third attempt, I let off the gas and just sat there, heart still racing, staring at the hood and thinking about calling a tow. That's when my eyes drifted to the side mirror. In the mirror, past the tilted angle of the truck bed and the faint glow of my taillights on the crop, I saw movement on the road. At first, it was just a dark shape against the gravel. Then it pushed itself up and started coming toward me. The same impossible, hunched-over figure I'd hit a minute earlier. Same long arms, same weird, half-wolf head. If I'm being honest, the way it looked at me in that moment reminded me of a curious dog that's trying to see what you're doing. Head tilted a little, shoulders rolling, closing the distance at a steady walk. If it hadn't been so deformed and so damn big, but it wasn't some lab or shepherd. It was at least as tall as the truck, even in this weird posture, and judging by the size and the impact earlier, I'd say it weighed at least 400 pounds, and it was coming straight for the truck. That's when the panic really set in. Whatever I'd hit wasn't dead, and it wasn't running away. It was coming for me. Out of reflex more than anything, I reached for the center console. My fingers were clumsy and slick with sweat, fumbling at the latch. It took me 2 tries to get it to pop open. The little dome light in the cab made everything look yellow and shaky, including my own hands. My revolver was right where I'd put it, months ago, stuffed in its holster. I grabbed the grip, yanked it free, and pulled it into my lap. My thumb fought with the snap on the holster strap for a second before it came loose. At the same time, I realized my seatbelt was still on, pinning me back in the seat. I slid the gun into my left hand and went for the belt buckle with my right. Even that felt like it took forever. My fingers were trembling so bad I missed the button twice, then finally hit it and felt the belt snap back into the pillar. It was only then, unstrapped with the gun in my hand, that I really understood how bad my situation was. Stuck in a field, in the middle of the night, with that thing closing in on me from behind. By then, it was almost at the driver's side door. I could hear it more than see it as it brushed against the truck, while its bulk pushed the crop aside. In the rearview mirror, I could see its face a lot clearer now that it was only a couple of yards away. The eyes were too deep below its distinct brows for a regular wolf, and they caught just enough light to show a flat yellow shine. The muzzle was short and blocky, not long and pointy, with heavy lips pulled back so I could see thick, blunt-looking fangs even though the mouth wasn't fully open. Its nose was broad and wet-looking, like a big shepherd's, but the skin around it was wrinkled and pulled tight, with whatever effort it was making, just to stand there and breathe. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I didn't want to be sitting there waiting for it to rip the door open. I reached for the window crank and spun it down as fast as I could, dropping the glass halfway. Cold air rushed in, along with the smell of wet dog mixed with roadkill. The stink was so strong, it hit me like a punch to the face. I had to gag while twisting my body to the left. I brought my right arm up with the revolver and shoved the barrel out toward where I knew it was. There was no time, and my posture was just too weird to aim properly. But that didn't really matter at this distance. I just pointed at the dark, moving mass beside the door and squeezed the trigger. The first shot went off with a blast that filled the cab. The recoil hammered my wrist and elbow harder than normal because I was twisted around in the seat. My elbow actually hit the edge of the steering wheel. My ears started ringing immediately. I saw it jerk back in the corner of my eye. One sharp, full-body flinch backwards. The second my arm came back up, I fired again. The second shot was just as painful as the first, but I was prepared this time. I fired a third time just a second later. Somewhere between the second and third shot, it screamed. I don't know if the last two rounds connected or where I hit it, but the sound it made wasn't like anything I'd heard before. High and tearing at the edges like a dog in pain, but with a deep, angry growl underneath it. In the mirror, I saw the shape drop down suddenly, like its legs had gone out from under it. Corn stalks thrashed as it scrambled away from the truck, low, probably on all fours now, crashing into the crop. I kept the gun pointed out the window, finger off the trigger now, listening to it plow through the rows until the noise faded. When the silence finally came back, my right arm was shaking so bad I couldn't hold the revolver up any longer. The recoil had lit up every sore spot from the crash, wrist, elbow, shoulder, chest, from where the belt had dug in. It hurt much worse than it ever had at the range. I pulled my arm back inside and rested the gun on my thigh, trying to breathe and trying to decide if it was really gone or just circling around for another try. After a minute or two of that, reality caught up with me. Sitting there with a gun in my hand wasn't going to get me home. My phone was still in the cradle on the dash. I put the revolver over onto the passenger seat, where I could grab it quickly if I needed to, then fumbled the phone loose with my left hand. I called my boss. I didn't tell him I'd just shot at some kind of wolfman in a cornfield. I told him I'd hit something big on the section line and put my truck in the ditch like an idiot. He swore a little, then said he'd grab his F-350 and come pull me out. His place is on the other side of town, so we both knew it wasn't going to be quick. 30 minutes, maybe, he said. Once I hung up, the cab felt even smaller. I cranked the window back up all the way and locked the doors, even though I knew a window or a lock wasn't going to stop something that size if it really wanted in. I picked the revolver back up and kept it resting on my thigh, barrel pointed down toward the floor, finger off the trigger. My hands never stopped shaking. It ended up taking about 40 minutes for help to arrive, the longest 40 minutes of my life. I kept my eyes moving, scanning the broken rows in front of the hood, the side mirror, the rear view, back to the side mirror again. Every little shift of a stalk or flicker of shadow made my heart jump. I caught myself holding my breath more than once, just listening, waiting for that crashing sound to start up again. It never did that night. No more movement in the corn besides whatever the wind finally started to push around. No more screams, no growls, nothing. Eventually, I saw lights bounce across the top of the corn from the road. Then the glow of my boss's truck eased to a stop on the shoulder. He walked down the ditch with a flashlight and a tow strap, asking what the hell I'd hit. I told him again it was something big, and left it at that. We checked the front of my truck. No radiator leaking, no axle hanging, just a beat-up bumper and some plastic busted. Whatever damage there was, it wasn't enough to stop it from rolling. He hooked up to my frame, went back to his F-350, and started the winch. A minute later, I was back on the road. The truck drove a little out of alignment, but it was good enough to get home. I didn't see the creature again that night. No blood trail I could make out from the road, no carcass in the ditch, just a wrecked patch of corn, some torn-up mud where I'd gone off, and those 40 minutes burned into my head like a bad tattoo. My second encounter with what I think was the same creature happened just 5 months ago. For a while after the crash, I thought about it every day. Then work picked up, winter rolled in, and life went on. I still carried my revolver everywhere out of habit, but I stopped jumping at every noise. The whole thing slid into that part of your brain where you keep bad memories you don't want to poke too much. Last winter, I started dating this girl, Kayla. We'd known each other a bit from town, but we started seeing each other properly around Christmas. She's the daughter of a local farmer and still lives out on her folks' place, about 15 miles northeast of Huron. Her parents are the church every Sunday type. They're strict about some things, but they seemed okay with me being around as long as I was useful and respectful. Helping with stuff around the farm was a good way to spend time with her and also look good in front of them. One evening late this summer, we were out checking fences and water troughs for the cattle. It was one of those evenings where you think you're just going to do a quick round, make out for a bit, then head in for supper. But on a farm, things almost never go according to plan. The sun was almost down, and Kayla was still busy at a pump that wouldn't start, crouched down, banging on the housing and tracing wires. I'd driven my ATV a little farther along the fence line to look at a low spot where the cows like to push through. On my way back toward her, I noticed the cattle in that particular paddock were acting wrong. Instead of spreading out and grazing, the whole herd had bunched up and was moving as one big clump, running circles around the field. I've seen them spook at storms and vehicles before, but this was tighter, more frantic, like something was actually after them. I let off the throttle and watched them for a few seconds, trying to figure it out. That's when I saw it, something dark moving behind them, cutting across the back end of the herd. At first I thought it was a bear or maybe one of the neighbor's big shepherds, but it looked too big, and it was moving strangely. After a few seconds, my brain caught up. Even with the sun low, I could clearly make out that distinct, hunched shape weaving in and out behind the cattle. Upright, then dropping lower, then upright again. Long arms swinging, head too big and too blocky to be a person. I couldn't make out every detail at that distance, but I knew what it was. Call it instinct. I knew I was looking at the same weird Dogman thing I'd hit with my truck. I was several hundred yards out. Even if I'd wanted to shoot, there was no way I could hit from where I was. So I watched, frozen for a few heartbeats, trying to figure out if it was just harassing the cows or actually going in for a kill. Then the situation took a turn. Kayla hadn't seen it yet. She was still at the pump, up near the middle of the fence line. For some reason, she'd turned her flashlight on, as I could see the beam jerking around every few seconds. That jerky cone of light must have caught the creature's attention. 1 second, it was pacing behind the herd. The next, it peeled away from the cows and turned toward her. I'd say it was about 300 yards out when it changed direction. It started making a straight beeline for her spot, covering ground a lot faster than I was comfortable seeing. That snapped me out of it. I pinned the throttle, turned the ATV toward Kayla, and floored it. The plan in my head was simple. Get between her and it, and if I had to, shoot it at close range. I honestly believe I would have gotten to her before that thing did and had a decent shot at it if I'd stuck to that plan. That's not what happened. I was doing maybe 30 miles an hour across the pasture, hitting ruts and cow trails, when panic got the better of me. With one hand still on the bars, I reached down and pulled my revolver from the holster on my belt. I brought it up in front of me while the ATV was bouncing around, and aimed in the general direction of that dark shape running low across the field. I started shooting way too early. I squeezed off the first round at something like 100 yards out, maybe more. The muzzle flash lit up the grass in front of me for a split second. I barely had the gun back on target before I fired again, then again. I remember Kayla's flashlight jerking up toward me, her not understanding yet what I was shooting at, just hearing the cracks roll across the pasture. I fired 4 times before it finally hit me that I was wasting bullets at that distance, on that terrain, from the back of a moving ATV. The only good part is that it worked, in a way. Whether I hit it or it was just the noise that scared it, it broke off the attack. 1 second, it was headed straight for Kayla. The next, it cut hard to the left and ran toward the line of trees that marked the edge of the property. I kept the throttle pinned until I reached her, heart pounding, revolver still in my hand. At first, Kayla was more mad than scared. She stood up from the pump, eyes wide, and yelled at me, "What the hell are you shooting at?" She'd obviously heard the gunshots, but didn't get her head up and turn around fast enough to see the creature. I didn't explain right then. I just said, "We need to get back to the house. Now." She gave me a strange look, like she wasn't sure if I was joking or losing it, but she climbed onto the back and wrapped her arms around my waist. I turned us around and headed for the yard as fast as I dared in the dark. On the way in, I kept checking the mirrors and the fields, half expecting to see that hunched shape pacing us along the fence. Back at the house, her mom already had supper on the table. We washed up quickly at the mudroom sink and sat down like it was any other night, but I couldn't stop thinking about that damn creature. Everything I'd tried so hard to bury came rushing back all of a sudden. Halfway through the meal, Kayla put her fork down and looked straight at me. "Okay," she said. "What the hell happened out there?" Her parents were both at the table, so I knew I wasn't going to get out of this without a plausible explanation. I looked at her dad, then at her mom, and realized this was one of those moments where you either tell the truth or shut up forever. I took a breath and told them about the night I hit the so-called Dogman, the crash, the thing in the road, how it walked on 2 legs and came right up to my truck, how I'd shot at it to get it to back off. I told them I hadn't told many people because I knew exactly how it sounded. Then I told them what I'd seen in their paddock that evening. I said it looked like the same animal to me, the same tall, hunched frame, the same weird head. I told Kayla that was why I'd started shooting. I saw that thing peel off from the herd and make a straight line for her, and I just wanted it gone. I cursed myself in front of them. If I'd waited a bit longer, maybe I would have been able to take it down for good. Kayla and her mom both looked skeptical. Not rude, just that tight, polite look people get when they're trying to decide if you're serious or pulling their leg. I could tell they were both thinking big dog or coyote or maybe black bear and nothing more. Before I could say anything else, her dad put his fork down and cleared his throat. "I've seen it too," he said. The table went quiet. Even Kayla stopped frowning for a second and looked at him. He said it had been the year before, out in one of the back paddocks. He'd gone out with the rifle after hearing bawling in the middle of the night, thinking it was coyotes on a calf. When he got there, the calf was down, and something big and upright was hunched over it. He said in the beam of the flashlight, it looked like a wolf standing wrong. Too tall, spine bent like a banana, head low and shoulders too high. He'd shouldered the rifle and fired, but it was farther than he liked, and the shot wasn't clean. The creature jerked, then bolted, cutting across the field and over a low rise. It was a lot faster than it looked once it dropped to all fours. The calf lived, but just barely. He had no explanation for the thing, and never said anything about it because, in his words, who's gonna believe that story from an old farmer? "So no," he said to his wife and to Kayla, "I don't think he's making it up. I think there's something out there that ain't supposed to be out there." Hearing him say that out loud was almost worse than thinking I was alone in it. It meant I hadn't imagined it. It meant whatever I'd hit with my truck and whatever I'd seen in that paddock wasn't just a one-off, stress-induced hallucination. Oddly enough, the Dogman encounters became something we could bond over. I don't know how many other people around here have seen that thing and kept their mouths shut because they didn't want to be the crazy one at the table. I'm guessing it's more than 0, There might be a lot more strange things out there than most of us want to admit. All I can say is, I've seen this one twice now, and I hope to God there isn't a third time.